Karen, when I say the word empath, what comes to mind?
Feelings.
Feelings. But specifically, someone who is an empath, what comes to mind?
Someone who really feels the feelings.
Yes, that's great.
Their own and others.
Yep. Now, the dictionary defines an empath, ready for this, as a person with the paranormal ability to apprehend the mental or emotional state of another individual. That's a cockamamie definition if I've ever heard one.
For someone who feels feelings?
Yeah. I think not only is it cockamamie, it's myopic, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the word empath actually embodies to me is someone that feels others' emotions and can sometimes even be affected by them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this is something that you have had to contend with all your life, pretty much, no?
Pretty much, yep.
Yeah, me too. But has it ever gotten to the point where you feel that you're going to lose it?
I don't know about losing it, but it's gotten, I've woken up some days just on the verge of tears all day long for,
Yeah, where some people sometimes have a really difficult time being an empath and not being able to get a grip. Luckily, today's guest is going to teach us just how to get a grip and, in her words, move from hot mess and world-class awfulizer to thriving success, all while maintaining your empathic abilities.
All right. I'm ready to not be a hot mess anymore. So this is the interview for me.
All right. Well, here we go. My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
So we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something.
Anything.
That will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Will, how old were you the first time you got your palm read?
The first time I got my palm read, I think the first time was probably when I was in high school at some point. But the paint kind of wore off.
You are so funny. Oh my gosh. How about the last time?
I don't remember the last time I got my palm read. Must have been a very long time ago.
I know. I don't remember either. I mean, I know I've had it read before, I think. And then I've gotten some of those magazines or books where you try to read your own palm. And I was never very good at it.
Palm reading.
But it's something that everyone knows about, but not really many people have gotten done, right?
Well, we did that one episode with the
hand analyst.
The hand analyst.
But that seems different.
It does, I guess.
That was more scientific, right?
It was a lot more scientific. But couldn't it be somewhat similar in a way that palm readers tell you your future based on the lines that are on your hand, and the hand analysts also tell you what your future is supposed to be or what your life's purpose is supposed to be based on your lines on your hand?
Oh, I thought that was her telling us who we were. But I guess that's your life purpose too, right?
Yeah, your life's purpose is what she does, right? So though she uses it in a very scientific way, it doesn't mean that the people in a local carnival that take a look at your line to tell you how many kids you're going to have, well, that might be a little different because I don't think hand analysis can foretell your future that way. I don't think in terms of tell you how many kids you're going to have.
Well, I don't know about that, but I do want to go get my palm read again. So since we can't do that right now, why don't we just listen to the interview?
Sounds like a plan. Welcome to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. I am Will.
And I'm Karen.
We are your hosts as always. And today we have Jennifer Elizabeth Moore with us. She's the author of Empathic Mastery, an intuitive mentor, and a master trainer for EFT International. She helps empaths, creatives, and lightworkers control the empathic overwhelm that keeps them stuck in life and business, and to harness their abilities to manifest their deepest heart's desire. Doesn't that sound just wonderful?
It sounds fantastic.
I cannot wait to speak with her. Jennifer, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, Will and Karen, thank you so much for having me. And I just have to say, you guys made me chuckle listening to you talk about the definition. I didn't realize that apprehended was the word that the dictionary uses. I would be more inclined to say if I was going to change one thing in that definition, it would be absorbs all the thoughts, feelings, energy, and sensations of the world around us, not apprehends them.
Yeah, that was a big surprise for me when I researched it and said, no, this can't possibly. So I looked it up like 3-4 times and yep, sure enough, that's what it says.
Well,
So,
and actually, it strikes me that this may really have to do with the origins of the word, because the origins of the word came from a science fiction story that was written back in the 1950s called The Empath. And it was basically about this special subgroup of human beings with extrasensory perception and abilities and paranormal abilities who were basically being used by the government to apprehend emotions and pick up on what was going on. And then the word sort of went from that science fiction thing, and I can never remember the name of the author. I'm so sorry, sir. I can't recall your name, but that was where it started. And then, we saw the first sort of exposure in science fiction and in media with Star Trek, the first generation of Star Trek, where there was the episode called The Empath, and that's when it started to get into common language. But it was a word that didn't even exist until the 1950s and was basically coined by science fiction people. So it's interesting that the dictionary is using kind of the science fiction-y definition of it as opposed to our more sort of common understanding of it now.
seems to be kind of par for the course the way society is going these days, right? Everything is based on a science fiction book.
Yeah.
At least we feels like we're living through a science fiction book right now, myself.
Yeah, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, we're excited to talk to you because I know Karen is really excited to talk to you because she has suffered a lot with empathic abilities. She is very much affected by the
Yes.
emotions of other people and sometimes has a hard time snapping out of it. I'm sorry I'm speaking for you, Karen, but
That's okay.
and I think she probably pretty much identifies with that term you mentioned, the former hot mess and world-class awfulizer. But I'm curious, what did that look like for you?
So I'm imagining it look very similar to Karen's experience with this. For me, as a child, I was super sensitive. I was constantly feeling a lot of intense feelings. I was in a state of anxiousness most of the time. And I had a capacity to sort of imagine worst case scenarios. And the thing was that I was very frequently feeling out of sorts, even if there was nothing going on in my life that correlated to that. And so, because we're talking, I was being raised up, I was born in the early 60s. And so we're talking like being a kid in the 60s and 70s. This was a point where nobody was talking about this stuff. The concept of ESP or paranormal abilities was very, very fringy and very, like, not many people were talking about it. And so I was constantly basically being told that I was overreacting, that I was taking it too personally, that I was making too big a deal out of it, to get over it, to stop worrying about it, and that basically I just needed to ignore it and act like everything was okay. So I started to imagine by the time I was like 8, 9, 10 years old that there was something wrong with me and that I needed to fix myself. And so I spent the first, I don't know, sort of second and third decade of my life, really struggling with what's wrong with me and and why am I this way? Why am I reacting to things so frequently? Why do I feel blue for no reason? Why do I feel terrified for no reason? Why am I experiencing these horrible nightmares? Why am I having these sort of visions of apocalyptic possibilities, like all of the discomfort? And I was just living in this state of thinking, what's wrong with me? And it wasn't until I was in my late 20s, early 30s when I found this spectacular therapist that I started working with, who was very intuitive and who had done a lot of work on her own empathic and psychic abilities, who started to help me recognize that nearly all the time that I was feeling unexplainable distress, there was a correlation with either reconnecting to other people or being in an environment or a situation, or in some cases, picking up on something that was coming down the pike that was going to be happening. And that's when I first started to realize that what I was imagining was my own personal overwhelm and distress was partially mine, but more of it was actually coming from the world around me. And in my experience, there are people who are empaths where what they pick up on is just the people around them, like the thoughts, feelings, energy, sensation that are coming from the world around them. But then there are those of us who are so sensitive that we are also picking up on the geopathic stress. We are picking up on the climate change emergency. We are picking up on the sort of social unrest that is going on. And a lot of times, not only are we picking up on what's going on in the current environment, but often if you cannot explain why you're feeling what you're feeling, it can also be sort of feeling like ripples coming from the future into the present where we pick this up. Now, I can't explain why or how we have this capacity for premonition, but what I can say is that I can say that multiple times in my life, like to the point where I can no longer count, there has been this sort of sense of the rumbling underneath my feet, sensing that something is coming. And then maybe anywhere between 10 days to 3 weeks later, sometimes a bit longer, all of a sudden this big event happens. And I'm like, oh, that's what I was picking up on.
Now, as
Yeah.
I'm watching you speak, I'm watching Karen nod her head
Yeah,
very
I am too.
So I'm pretty sure that she would love to have the name of your therapist.
Yes.
Oh my god! So my eyes started to like tear up. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
god, she's talking my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wild. Keep
Well,
talking.
and so often the other piece of it that's so hard is that as empaths, we tend to be the canaries in the coal mine who are feeling the feelings and expressing the things that other people are not willing to talk about. And so one of the characteristics that I've seen to be pretty common is that we often come from families or communities where there's a certain bit of like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Nothing to see here, people. Move along. All of it's okay. And so, as very sensitive children, we may have had parents who were going through things, and generally, even just because of the way people are taught to suppress and compartmentalize their emotions, were not sharing them with us. But as sensitive people, we were picking them up. And what I've seen so frequently happen is the parents, like as children, we sense something, we ask about it, and we're basically told at a very, very early age, oh no, that's not going on. That's not real. That's not happening, even if it actually is. And I've seen this very frequently is that one of the things that happens for the empath is that the empath almost becomes the designated emoter or the designated sensor and the designated feeler in a family. And the stuff that other people don't want to deal with, whether it's their trauma, whether it's their addiction, whether it's their sort of unreconciled stuff, that we feel it and they're just like, yeah, no, not going there, not dealing with it. I actually have a person that I've been working with for a number of years whose mother is sort of the classic denier. And they were in a situation where they were in an accident. And the very first thing that happened, as soon as they like as soon as the accident was over, they just jumped up and they're like, I'm fine. And, and as empaths, we're like, you are not fine. You are in shock and you are in a state of complete distress here.
We've had a lot of guests who have spoken directly to me about stuff. This time, Karen, I told you, this one is for you because I'm seeing you just resonate with every single thing that she's saying. I'm seeing your eyes water. I'm seeing you're nodding. I'm seeing you like blossom up like, yes, someone else understands what I'm going through. So I guess what we need to figure out now that we know what an empath is. And I think, Karen, you were told that you were clairsentient. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's clear. That's a way of feeling, a clear, like typical what empath goes by. But how does someone get a grip?
How does someone get a grip? So I'd love to hold that for a second. Let's put a pin in that question because I want to talk about the difference between clairsentience and empath.
Oh, good. Yes. Yeah. Listen to the podcast longer for the answer. That's perfect. Good idea.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what I want to talk about is the thing about, all of the clairs, you've got sort of the spectrum of psychic ability or paranormal ability. You've got people who identify as intuitive. You've got people who identify as psychic. You've got people who identify as having one dominant clair. You also have people who identify as mediums, and you have people who are empaths. what I have found is that in all of these cases, we are more open and capable of receiving information than the average bear. We are receiving and getting stuff. But what I have found, and this is what makes being an empath really challenging, is that where an intuitive, a psychic, a clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient,
Cognizant.
claircognizant, clairgustance, clairaliens, whatever, all of
Claire
these
Danes.
yeah,
That's-
there's one of those
Must
jokes
begin.
you were threatening. And even like in people who are in mediumship, the thing is that in all of these cases, they can distinguish what is theirs and what is not theirs. They know they're picking up information, but they know that they're picking up information that is separate from them. There's discernment. Empaths, by our very nature, experience the data as if it's our own. And so not only are we picking up the thoughts, feelings, energy, and sensations from the world around us, a clairsentient can be picking up the thoughts, feelings, sensations, energy from the world around them, but they know it's coming from the world around them. What makes being an empath so hard is that we experience everything through our own sensory filters. And so what happens is the information comes in, but then we interpret it through our own body. We interpret it through our own thoughts. We interpret it through our own emotions. And so we start feeling sad as if it's our sadness. We start feeling fear if it's our fear. We start feeling rage if it's our rage. We start feeling the thinking or finding the distress. Like we will find a way to sort of create the scenario or the story to dial it into our own perspective so that then we are perseverating about something that's going on. So like, for example, I was at a conference a number of years ago, and I came there feeling absolutely confident and fine and excited to be there. And all of a sudden I was like there for a couple hours and I started to feel like a fraud. I started to feel like, who do you think you are? I started to experience my confidence flagging. And I just really started to like feel like insecure and uncomfortable. And all of a sudden it dawned on me that I was in a room. This was a business retreat for transformational entrepreneurs, and I was in a room where there were a lot of people who were not succeeding, and where the way that the people who were leading the event were teaching was that they were helping people to see their deficiencies and what it was that they needed to address. And so there was a whole room of people who were all having these like whack upside the head revelations of their inadequacies. But instead of it being like, oh, wow, I'm feeling all of this or sensing all of these people who are really struggling with their self-esteem because they're realizing maybe for the first time that they don't have all the answers, I experienced it as if it was my problem. And so what I have found, and this kind of leads us to the question you asked, which is, how as empaths do we deal with this? So the reason that I set up the 5-step system that's in my book is because what I found is that a lot of the solutions that are being offered to highly sensitive empathic people do not cut it. And part of it is like, how many times have you been told something like, oh, just put up a bubble of light? Like, have you ever been, have either of you guys ever gotten that one? Just put up a bubble of light, you'll be okay.
Well, yeah,
Or
like
just
that
think
sounds
positive
great.
thoughts, you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what I noticed was that the problem is that this is a step in the process, but it is not the first step. And if we are already carrying around a whole bunch of distress that we've absorbed and taken on from the world around us, the problem is that if you put a bubble of light up around that, it's kind of like taking a shower and leaving the bathtub like drain in the bottom of the tub and letting the dirty water sit there and then pulling the curtain back around. It's not going to address what you're already carrying inside.
Wait, that's not what you're supposed to do?
That's not what you're supposed to do.
Oh, oops.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's like you drain the bathtub.
All right, I'll pull the plug, Karen. Sorry.
Yeah, pull the plug. Let it drain. And so what I discovered is that the first step of being able to start getting a handle on your empathic ability is first just to even recognize that you are an empath. And so literally the first step in the system is recognize. And there's 3 levels to recognize. The first is just, oh, I am an empath and I am affected by these things. The second step is recognizing that you are actually feeling something, like going like, I'm feeling really out of sorts. I'm feeling really disoriented. I'm feeling really confused right now. And then the third step is to start working on recognizing what's mine, what's not mine, how much of this is actually coming from within me, how much of it is coming from without me. most of the time, it's a combination of, like I'll ask myself, is this mine? And I would say that 95% of the time, the answer is yes. And it's also something else. So the first step that we need to take is even acknowledging what it means to be an empath. And instead of like kind of buying into the gaslighting and continuing to tell ourselves, you're making too much of a big deal of it, get over it, stop worrying about it. Instead, we need to validate that we are picking something up, that we are sensing something, and it is affecting us. So that's like the first step when it comes to empathic mastery, is just to recognize what's going on. And very simply, one of the first things that I like to do is I like to just put my hands over my heart, sort of on, or in the center of my chest, but kind of over my sternum. And I just really love to ask myself, so is this mine? I just asking, is this mine? And a lot of times the answer will be yes, and. So, and then I might realize that some of my distress is like, lately, some of my distress has been, I've been really sort of having echoes of life during the Reagan administration, and just kind of like what life was like back then when we were, worrying about acid rain, and also like worrying about the sort of a lot of different things happening. But I know that there's that. And then there's also the reality of all the things that are going on in the world around us. So recognize is the first step. The second step, before we can protect ourselves and put up a bubble of light, is release. We need to release the stuff that is not ours and let it go. And that's where me as an EFT practitioner and an EFT trainer comes in, because in the more than 3 decades of work that I've been doing as an energy healer and an intuitive, I have never, ever, ever found a tool more effective than EFT, also known as tapping, but it stands for emotional freedom techniques. And honestly, I have yet to find something that it doesn't benefit in some way. There are also other ways we can release. We can go for walks. We can use our breath. We can use journaling. You could just, throw yourself into a clean bathtub and sort of imagine all the extra stuff kind of coming out of you. Yeah, clean bathtub. That's a good idea.
without the plug in the drain. Yes.
Or you pull you put the plug in, you run the clean water, and then you pull the plug when you're done. And so, release is the second step. The third step is when we start to build up our psychic filters and shields. It's the third step is protect. This is when we can start building up more robust filters and shields, because if we build up filters and shields in a state of distress, the distress that is going on internally is almost like, it's kind of like it's kind of like lacquer remover from the inside. It weakens our filters and shields internally, so it compromises our ability to sustain any kind of protection. So we come to the third step of setting up our energetic filters and shields, but also logistically having boundaries, recognizing where are we saying yes when we should be saying no, where are we acquiescing, where are we going along, where are we withholding our truth, where are we overextending ourselves, where are we overdoing, overgiving, where are we people pleasing, because these are also traits that are very common for empaths, because we feel people's disapproval, we feel people's like disappointment, and we don't, and it's uncomfortable. And so we will often want to please people so that we don't have to feel the discomfort. And that's a whole other piece of it, because what I have found is that, some people would say that empaths are codependent because we are sort of enmeshed or invested in helping people or rescuing people. What I believe is that we feel better when other people feel better. So it is absolutely understandable that we're going to want to rush into rescue, and we're going to want to help people to feel better.
So it's a selfish thing, then, is what you're saying.
It is a selfish thing to do. Yeah, we have an agenda. It's very uncomfortable to be around people
Karen.
in distress. So, so then the fourth step after we learn to protect is connect. And I look at that as connecting to a power greater than ourselves, because I really have found that the universe abhors a vacuum. If you just clear things out, you get rid of the negativity and the toxicity, but you don't replace it with anything, then unfortunately, the negativity is going to come back. And so what I have found is that we need to start connecting to a force, a power, a wisdom, a love that is greater than ourselves. Now, I'm not going to tell you what your sense of a higher power is. I believe that is an incredibly intimate thing, and that is a very, very deeply personal thing. But in order to not keep on repeating the same pattern of taking on all the energy that's coming from the world around us, we really need to connect to something different. So it's sort of like we're replacing the energy with a more positive energy, with a more positive frequency. So instead of us running away from things, what we're starting to do is we're moving towards our desire and moving towards the things that feel good to us. And then the final step of empathic mastery, which comes after we've really kind of gotten ourselves stabilized and we're not wobbling all over the place, is act, which has to do with really looking at how are we living our life in a way that allows us to be of service in the world, but also really allows us to do the things that keep us healthy and thriving and living in a way that reinforces and supports us as opposed to keeps getting us into trouble. So, long answer, but the thing is that where some people might have a short, sweet, quick, easy answer, I wrote a 380-page book about what we need to do to deal with this, and I have spent the last multiple decades of my life really learning how to navigate it because it is complicated.
Well, we need to take a break, but we'll be right back with a lot more of this amazing interview. Well, you asked for it, then you asked for it again, then you demanded it. Well, finally, we have heard you. The Skeptic Metaphysician merchandise store is now open. With really fun show logo designs on things like shirts and mugs to notebooks, phone and laptop cases, and everything in between, you can now take your favorite Metaphysics 101 show with you everywhere you go. Just go to skepticmetaphysician.com/store and you'll find a ton of cool stuff you can select from. Stickers, buttons, even COVID masks, wall art, tote bags, tapestries, you name it, we probably have it. Help us spread the word about the show. Get your Skeptic Metaphysician merch right now. skepticmetaphysician.com/store. And now back to the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Are there any benefits at all? I'm exhausted. I'm well, okay, I'm not the only one, but man, this kind of sucks.
So I really do believe there are benefits. And what I actually believe, I actually interestingly channeled an entire book. It was the very first time I've ever channeled an entire book, but I channeled an entire book last week. And what kept coming through as I was doing this was the explanation that the thing is, we are in the first wave of empaths. We are the ones who are awakening to our sensitivity. In order for this planet, the planet is going to survive regardless of what we as human beings do. The planet will find her way and we'll keep going. But us as a species, we are on a precarious, we're kind of on a precarious, moving in a direction that it's we need to back that truck up.
Like a freight train coming at you.
Freight train. Yeah, we are making some interesting choices, let's just say. And what my sort of counsel explained to me was that there are more and more people are awakening to their empathic nature, because in order for us to change the course of our behavior as a species, we must feel the consequences of our choices and we must understand what that is. And the thing is that this idea, one of the things that I keep hearing over and over again is that we are the cells in the body of this earth. We are not individuals. We are not separated. We are all cells in the body of the earth. We are part of a larger organism. And as part of a larger organism, we are not actually separate. And so when we are feeling ourselves compartmentalized, when we are feeling ourselves in this sort of, world of human dominion, we don't feel the repercussions of our choices and our actions as a species. And what I believe is happening is that there are those of us who are sort of born in the first wave. And I'm imagining, Karen, you and I are kind of in that first, sort of those first really highly sensitive people who are sensing what is going on, not just with ourselves, but on, whether it's within your environment, it could be just in your community or your circle of people. It could be in your region. It could be just, and it can sort of expand out to globally. But I really believe that we are the ones who are feeling what is happening on the planet. And part of it is that our job is to actually feel it, but also to access love and to access hope and possibility. But in many ways, it's we are here to feel what everybody needs to be feeling in order for us to turn this around. And what I will say is that in my experience, the more comfortable I have gotten with feeling my own grief, my own anxious, my own fear, and my own disappointment and anger, and the more work I've done around sort of reconciling the past wounds, the more capable I am of holding space for the pain without finding myself being submerged in it. So, but it's a tall order because we are hitting crisis proportions as the species right now. And you and me, those of us who are feeling it, it is not easy by any means. And especially these last like 2.5 years with the pandemic, it has been brutal. And I will just say, Karen, if you're not talking to a lot of empaths, you are so not alone. Like, this is the experience that many of us are having right now.
Yeah, and I was so excited because I finally, after however many years old I am, learned how to compartmentalize. Repress. I'm like, hey,
I had to learn how to curate.
Yeah.
I learned how to curate with this. One of the gifts of the pandemic was being able to tap out and say, I've had it. I spent the first 6 months of the pandemic watching Good Witch and Grey's Anatomy. God only knows why Grey's Anatomy was safe, but there was something about the over-the-top dramatization of it. But also what I realized is that what I love about Grey's Anatomy is that it's like there's no suppression of emotion. It's all like big feelings all the time. And for empaths, when people own their feelings, we don't have to own them. So there was almost like a comfort of being able to see people processing their feelings on Grey's Anatomy without having to be the person to process the feelings for them. Right. And then Good Witch, which I don't know if you've ever watched it, it's a very adorable Hallmark series about this lovely healer named Cassie Nightingale who runs a metaphysical shop somewhere in this lovely little small town in Canada. And it just has episode upon episode with just very, very benign and tame things where the villain literally wears a black hat and it's so tame. It's just so sweet. And that was about what I could tolerate. So I would say I learned to curate, not necessarily compartmentalize, but to curate. Yeah.
So I need to step in here and say this episode is not brought to you by Good Witch or Grey's Anatomy.
You did that in a very good announcer voice.
Thank you. I've done a lot of.
As I would say, and I am not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV.
I want to touch base a little bit on what you said. And you touched on this a little bit, but when someone, probably the best way to say this is, I've constantly told Karen that I think she's on this planet to share love, to spread love, right? Because she is an unbelievably loving human being who cares so deeply for people that she has so much love for them. But societal norms keep things like that at arm's length. But I encourage her to share that love. If enough of us were to go out there and really just screw the societal norms and just allow yourself to love others and express your love, would that tilt the scales a little bit?
I really believe we are in the pivot right now, and that we are in, what I believe, and one of the things that I said in the book is that I think we're kind of, if you've ever heard of Ken Kesey, the 100th monkey theory, and the idea of basically the 100 monkey theory was a story where there was this island and these monkeys learned how to wash their potatoes. And so the scientists were watching this, and then one tribe of monkeys or one group of monkeys would teach their young how to do this. And then eventually sort of these other monkeys started to pick it up from the other monkeys and they started teaching their young. So eventually the entire population of monkeys on this one island were washing their potatoes. And then all of a sudden, these other scientists who are sort of observing monkeys in another island separate from this started to notice this phenomenon where all of a sudden these other monkeys were washing the potatoes. And so the theory of the 100th monkey is that when we get to critical mass in terms of a consciousness or an awareness, there will be a quantum shift where suddenly the 100th monkey sort of flips the switch and everybody has this access to this thing. My theory is that, Karen and I are in the 87th monkey category. We are getting there, but as a species, we haven't quite hit critical mass. And our job is absolutely to be turning the switch and to be doing the things that not everybody is doing yet, which is expressing love. And I want to speak a little bit more about why do we have this ability. The thing about an empath is that we have both the ability to receive, but we also have the ability to broadcast and beam. And so when we are taking on the thoughts, feelings, energy, sensation of the world around us, and we're spinning out with the misery of it, it is very, very, very hard to do anything else. But as we learn how to release this and we learn how to find our center and sort of recalibrate within, what we can do is we can start to become beacons for love, for compassion, for hope, and for healing. And we can actually start broadcasting a signal instead of being part of the problem where we're just absorbing and then amplifying the distress.
That's really interesting. And I'm just kind of thinking of all of my life experiences and how many people are probably in the same boat that I'm in that are just kind of opening up or not even really realizing this now. And so many things are clicking. For example, like my parents split up when I was very young, but my father was very much, don't make a big deal. Don't be so emotional, blah, blah, blah. But when anybody, including my father, have any sort of life issues, who's the one they talk to?
Yeah.
And who's the one that hangs up the phone crying? And so I was thinking about, while you were speaking and just how, it shouldn't only be the sadness that you hold. And I'm like, well, and this is not like, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I have been told hundreds of times that when I walk into a room, it lightens up, that I bring happiness and joy. And I think maybe I'm just getting those little bits in everybody and just reflecting that out, that it's not me, it's their own joy that they're seeing.
Nope. Toot that horn, baby, because you have a light about you. You are an angel on this planet, and you're bringing that energy with you wherever you go.
I can absolutely see it. And this is my first meeting with you, Karen, but I can feel your glorious heart, and I can completely see your beautiful, beautiful light.
That have confirmed it. 6 people maybe have confirmed it now. A lot of people have confirmed it. So eventually you're going to decide to believe what we're all telling you. Eventually.
Well, and you say something that I think is so incredibly important, because so often we really do have to fake it till we make it and act as if. We have to take the words of the people we love at face, the people that we love and trust, not the ones who are gaslighting us, but the ones who we really do love and trust at face value, and go, if they believe in me, maybe they can see something that I am too distressed to see right now, but maybe I can go with that. And just really living with knowing that we are enough, that we are a beacon for love, that we do have a mission, that we are here. And actually, recently I've been starting to do what I'm calling the Fairy Godmother Apprenticeship Program with a number of people who I've been working with and mentoring, and where it's all about not just fixing the problems and focusing on the problems, but taking it to the next level, which is, how do we share joy in a world that is so externally focused on issues and problems? And I think that's another part of it, is like, while I am not a fan of spiritual bypassing or light washing or ignoring the major social issues that are going on in our planet right now, I do think that we have a tendency as a species to perseverate on all the wrong things and not give ourselves permission to feel pleasure, to play, to have fun, to go for delight. And if anything, like Karen, your job and my job is to radiate love and to share joy, to share pleasure, to share fun, and to help people flip the switch so that they're not just sinking in despair. Because, I've been really getting the sense of, like, at the same time that we have people who are in just absolute abject terror and agony, we also have a mother who has just been handed her brand new baby, who is falling in love for the first time. We have people who are having their first, like, they have fallen in love and they're, they're getting it on for the first time, and that ecstatic reunion of, like, I just found my boo. I just connected. We have people who are performers, who are musicians, who are out in the world in stadiums, experiencing the ecstasy of an entire stadium of thousands and thousands and thousands of people grooving with their music and feeling it. We have people who are dancing. We have, football players and other athletes who are doing their optimum performance, who are winning awards and championships, and who are just elated. All of this is going on at the same time. And yet, as a society, turn on the news and find out what's wrong. And so I think that for those of us who are highly sensitive and empathic, it's really important to start trying to feel the joy that is in the world, as well as feeling or acknowledging the sorrow.
Wow. There's so much to talk about on this topic.
I know. This is one of the conversations that can go on and on.
And you're right. Before we start recording, you're like, we're not going to have any problem filling up the time. So you are absolutely right. We might have to go long. But I do want to talk about your book, because your book brings a lot of practical, tactical knowledge and tips on how to handle all this stuff. Again, one more time, it's called Empathic Mastery. But
it is called Empathic Mastery, a 5-step system to go from emotional hot mess to thriving success.
Yeah. And in the book, you really do a deep dive on each one of those steps. I mean, it's a wonderful book. But one of the things that I've heard you mention as I was researching is that you should try to stay away from processed sugar.
Yes.
What does that have to do with empathic abilities?
Okay, so sugar, let me see if I can try to. So sugar is an endocrine disruptor, in the sense that, insulin is a hormone. And when we are consuming large amounts of carbohydrate, we are basically disrupting our hormones. And if you are a human being, but especially if you're female and you've ever experienced PMS, you know how much our hormones impact us.
Now, hold on, because I've experienced it, but from the other side of the fence. Does that still count?
Yes. So you know too. You know too. And the thing is that there are, we don't necessarily think about insulin as a hormone. We don't necessarily think about sugar is something that will cause our blood sugar. It will cause our system to spike with really high blood sugar and then crash with really low blood sugar. And our bodies are not meant to process a lot of sugar. Our bodies, as a species, we didn't, even fruits were not really easy to access. Up until recently, sugar is a very modern concept. It was a very, very special treat until very, very recently. And the problem is that sugar influences and affects our blood sugar, and it deeply, deeply impacts our mood, but it also compromises the bacteria, the flora that grows in our gut. And essentially, there's more understanding that our gut has the same cellular makeup as the gray matter of our brain. And there's a sort of, when people talk about trusting your gut, that's because there's a deep connection between the gut, or I'm pointing at my head, there's a deep connection between the gut and the brain.
That's a strong connection there.
Strong connection there. And the thing is that when we feed our gut unfavorable foods that contribute to or help unfavorable flora to grow in our gut, we develop what is called gut dysbiosis. And as we develop gut dysbiosis, what happens is we throw our entire system out of whack, and we compromise the integrity and the literal sort of filtering system of our internal gut. And so if you have ever heard the saying in metaphysics, as above, so below, or as within, so without, when we compromise the filters and the sort of extremely resilient internal lining of our gut, we are not only compromising our internal gut, we are also compromising our external filters and shields. So sugar is something that affects us deeply emotionally, and it affects us also very much physically. And so what I have found is that while there certainly are exceptions to the rule, and there are some empaths who are way more physically resilient and able to kind of get away with it, or they're just so much younger that their body has not reached that sort of critical mass. But in my experience, once you start talking about people getting into their mid-20s and beyond, the more sugar you consume, or the more sort of processed carbohydrates you consume, because, white bread turns into sugar, the more compromised your gut becomes, and the more compromised your entire hormonal system becomes, and the more dysregulated one becomes. So I have found that stopping sugar is actually one of it's one of the most important things we can do. But what I will say is that if you do not have healthy alternatives in place and you just go cold turkey, in the same way, if you ever quit smoking and you know that when you quit smoking, it's sort of all your stuff comes up. If you've been using sugar to self-soothe, then the challenge is that unless you've got some kind of other way to take care of yourself and support yourself, it is going to really, use a four-letter word.
Absolutely.
It's going to really suck. It's going to really suck.
That's tame. I don't have to.
Okay, I know, but I just wanted to be sure that I wasn't using.
I
was looking for.
I know. I could drop the F-bomb all over the place. I have a friend who crochets bombs with the word F on them. So I'm getting a set of purple crocheted F-bombs that I'll be able to drop during podcasts and Facebook Lives and things like that.
I love it.
Well, then that gives you a roadmap, Karen, right? For how you need to live your life moving forward. You've got the 5 steps. If you want to know more about how to get a grip on stuff, Empathic Mastery, the book, is fantastic. It's a no BS, tell it like it is guide written specifically for empaths.
Yeah. I don't have to figure out what it's saying.
No.
I want it. Tell me directly.
It is a no BS. Tell it like it is, and it's written by an empath who cracked the code on how to handle it. So, if you recognize any of this in you, I would urge you to check out Jennifer's book. We're going to add a direct link to it in our show notes. So, if you're listening to this on the radio, All you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to her episode page, and just click the link. It'll be that easy for you to find it. If you're listening to it on your phone right now, hit the little eye on the corner that gives you the show notes, and you will find the link there. You don't even need to leave your couch. So, Jennifer, you have given us so much to think about. I know Karen, her life has now been changed. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise with us, because it's something that we've been wanting to tackle for a long time, and something that I think will help Karen and a lot of folks who are listening right now.
You're not crazy. You're not.
You're not crazy.
You are, but
if I can just say, I'd love to say two things. One is that in addition to the book, I also have a free Facebook group where I offer a lot of support. I teach master classes, and you can learn more about that by going over with the show notes and everything, because I would really, my mission is to help other highly sensitive empathic people to understand what they are, why they feel the way they feel, and to really turn it around. And I just want to say, Karen, my heart, I really can identify and relate with what you're going through, and that it does get better. I promise it can get better. You are not crazy. You are not making stuff up. You are here for a reason. You are here for a reason, and you are part, and I really believe that you and the rest of us, and the empathic tribe that is rising up in the world, that we are here to be part of the solution and to help birth a new world where things can be better. So you guys, thank you so much for having me on. This time has whizzed by.
Sure has.
Oh my God, what an amazing conversation. It has been such a pleasure to talk with you.
Absolutely. We feel exactly the same way. And we are going to add all of those links directly on our show notes so that you have a way to connect, not just find her book, but also connect directly with Jennifer, whether it's her Facebook group or on her social media accounts. We'll have all those links on our show notes. So feel free to click those and connect with her directly. Jennifer, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. We look forward to maintaining contact with you.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Facebook group.
Great.
Yes, please. Yeah.
And thank you for coming along on this journey of discovery. We'd love to continue our conversation with you on our website or on Facebook and Instagram under @SkepticMetaphysician or skepticmetaphysician.com. And if you're listening to this on the radio and you missed something, not to worry. All of our episodes, including this one, can be found at skepticmetaphysician.com, where you can also watch the videos or even send us email or voicemails directly from the site. We absolutely adore feedback. We really love to hear from you. We'd appreciate hearing from you now. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we have. We'll see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysicians. Until then, take care.